Hello and welcome back. In the last video, we went over game logic and events using the event sheet. If you haven't watched those videos, I recommend going back and making sure you understand the event system before we get started, because I'm going to go fairly quickly. Remember, if you don't understand something, just rewind the video and follow along. Definitely don't stop trying. If you still don't understand something, leave a comment or send me a message/email. In this video, we'll be changing out the background and adding some walls to our level. I'm trying a new, more structured format with this video compared to my previous videos, so please let me know which format you like more in the YouTube comments. I'll be starting off with a new project in this video so we can make sure we are all on the same page. Again, the Ghost Shooter tutorial. So first things first, we'll open the project, and we're going to make the world a little bit bigger. We can do this by clicking on Layout 1 and changing the size property. Just like coordinates, this is displayed with an X, or width value, and a Y, or height value, in the format X, Y. We will make this larger so we have more room to place our obstacles. Something like 2000 by 2000 will probably do as well. Now, notice how we have a bigger background behind our floor, or tiled background. What we will need to do is expand our tiled background to fit our layout so that we don't have a white background when we're playing the game. We can do this two ways. First, we can click and drag to make the tiled background bigger, or if we want to be more accurate with the size, we can set the size property in the property panel after we've clicked on the background. Notice how the image didn't stretch like it normally does with sprites, for example? That's because our background uses the tiled background plugin to repeat the background instead of stretching it. The other thing we have to change now that we have changed the layout width is how our monsters are spawning. So if we open up Event Sheet 1 and scroll down to Event 8 here, we see the every 3 seconds spawn a monster event. In this event, we place a monster at x equals 1500 and y equals a random number between 0 and 1024. Let's actually change this to be a random location outside of the screen. We want to make sure we spawn the monster outside of the screen so that our monster doesn't spawn on top of us. Now, this will get a little bit complicated, so I'll try my best to explain the logic and the code behind this. We will double click on Create Object Monster on layer Main at 1500, random 1024. We're going to make the monster spawn anywhere to the right of the layout. We will change the X value to be 2050 and the Y value to be any number between 0 and 2000. So that's just random 2000. Great. Let's save our game and preview it with the new size. As you can see, our world was quite a bit bigger than before. Alright, so next up I want to introduce you to a site called opengameart.org. We'll just open up a new tab to opengameart.org. If you have an internet connection, you can open up this tab in your browser and you can start looking for any kind of game art that you can imagine. It's the perfect place for programmers like myself to go if we have neither the time nor the talent to create our own game art. By all means, if you can draw and create digital art with your computer, go ahead. Construct has some great tools to allow you to do that. But creating your own art is a great way to make a game truly unique for sure. So for this series, we're going to be using OpenGameArt to change out our background, find some barriers, as well as some music that fits our level design and atmosphere. So first off, let's change our repeating background image. I'd like to go for a more sci-fi feel with this game, so I'm going to try and find an image that looks pretty sci-fi. So I'll hover over Browse here and go to 2D Art. And on the left-hand side, I'll search for sci-fi under the search box. And then I can click on Search. And I like this one called Sci-Fi Interior Tiles. So we'll click on this. So tiles are just a bunch of assets for a game that are all rolled up into one easy to use image. So for example, this background piece is what we want to use for our game's background. And we can select this specific bit of that image when we're defining our object type in Construct 3. So this looks great. I think it has everything that we need. So I'll go ahead and I'll click on this PNG here where it says 7052 downloads. And I'll save the file, and it will go into my downloads folder, or if you're using Google Chrome, it'll show up down here. For me with Firefox, it shows up right here. And I'll go back to my Game Shooter tab. And let's go ahead and change our background. So we'll go back to Layout 1, and we'll double click on the Tiled Background Object Type. So this will open up the image editor. We'll clear this current image because we don't want to use it anymore, and we'll load up our sci-fi tile sheet. Okay, so everything in this tile sheet is 32 by 32 pixels square. We can double check this by zooming into a tile sheet and selecting the part that we want to repeat. On the bottom right, it should say 32 by 32. If we click Crop to Selection up here, we will get rid of the rest of the tiles and be left with one that we want to repeat. We'll then close it by clicking on the X button at the top right, and great, it started repeating for us. Next up, we're going to want to add some walls on the sides of our layout. So we could make a new sprite and just copy and paste it multiple times, but it is easier and generally better for performance to use these tiled backgrounds when we need to repeat a background a lot. So we'll right-click Object Types and then click Add a New Object Type. We'll scroll down and we'll find Tiled Background. Alternatively, you can search for Tiled Background, and we'll give it a name of Straight Wall Bottom, all one word. And then we'll click on Insert, and then we'll click on anywhere on the screen to insert a straight wall bottom, and it will automatically open up the image editor for us. So it's still blank because we haven't given it an image yet. We can give it an image by clicking this load folder icon up here, and we'll give it the tile sheet again. This time we will select our straight wall bottom. Make sure it's 32 by 32 pixels and crop to selection. Click the X to leave the screen, and our straight wall bottom now has a texture. Next, we'll need to increase the size of our straight wall bottom to be the correct size. So it needs to be 2000 by 32. So we can do that by clicking on the size property and changing the width to 2000 and the height to 32. So then moving our asset into place, you'll see that we have some alignment issues. That is because to make sure that our tiles line up, everything needs to be a multiple of 32, including the background and the layout size. So bringing up a calculator, if we do 2000 divided by 32, it's not a nice even whole number, so we won't fit a whole number of tiles into the background. We can keep trying numbers until one works. So for example, 2024 divided by 32. Oop, that wasn't 32. 2024 divided by 32 doesn't quite work. What about 2026 divided by 32? Still doesn't quite work. Alternatively, we can keep trying to multiply a 32 by a set of number to get the number of tiles that we want on our level. So if we wanted a level that was 64 tiles by 64 tiles, we would multiply 32 by 64. So if we did 32 times 64, we get the number 2048, and that's the width and the height that we're now looking for. So let's set the width and the height of our layout to be 2048 by 2048. And now we'll have to change the size of our background again. Great, that fits perfectly. Ah, the power of mathematics. We can now align our wall bottom to the bottom of the level. For more accuracy, we can set the position to be a nice, even, whole number. Just get rid of the decimal points and make sure it's also 2048 pixels long. Great, so we've got a wall at the bottom now. Now, here's a trick to reuse our straight wall bottom on the top of the level. Let's move a new straight wall bottom into the level, except this time at the top of the level. Now, we don't want our walls at the bottom of our top wall, so we'll have to flip it. We can apply an angle of 180 degrees to flip it, just by editing the property value, and then we can move it right into place. Let's try and get it as precise as possible. However, notice that these walls are not aligned. So what we can do to fix that is we can set the X image scale to negative 100%. Bottom left here in the properties, negative 100%. This essentially flips the image horizontally without flipping the image vertically. If you're having trouble with this concept, try using a piece of paper to visualize flipping images and rotating them, as well as playing with the three values I just discussed to get a scenario that works for you. Now, we do still have an issue where we don't have the top value, so for now we'll just have to move our image up by 1. The best way to fix this issue would be by creating a new object type called straight wall top and use the top wall from our tile set, but I just wanted to demonstrate how we can reuse some object types to save us a little bit of work. We'll just make sure this is lined up perfectly by moving these into the nice even whole numbers that we love so much, so we'll just round them ourselves. 2048 by 31. So the origin of the image is not always going to be in the top left. So the origin is just where the coordinate is. Especially if we're rotating things and scaling them, it might be in the top right or bottom right. Just as long as you know where you want it in the world, then you can just round them to the correct spot. So we can do the same thing for our left wall, or we can create a new object type called straight wall left. In my case, I'm just going to reuse the straight wall bottom, rotate it 90 degrees, and align it perfectly. So, aligning it with the left side gives us a nice new wall. However, there are holes in the top and bottom of this wall, so we'll need a corner piece to slot in the corners. So let's make one more object type to put in our corners here. We'll make a new simple sprite called background corner, all one word, and then we'll click anywhere on the screen to place our background corner. We'll load up our tile sheet, and then let's grab our bottom right corner here. We'll select the corner piece, but this time we'll not select the tile border, so these purple things at all. So this time it will be 31 by 32, and then we can crop to selection, and then exit. We'll drag our background corner into the correct spot, and then we'll fix its position with whole numbers. So just zooming in here with control and the scroll wheel, and we'll get it where we want it, and then we'll fix the position, and we'll round all the numbers where we have it right now. Looks like 65 by 2049 works. So then we'll copy and we'll paste our corner into the top left corner of our world, right about here, and we'll just rotate it 90 degrees. And then we'll align it again with some nice even numbers. remembering to fix it to be whole numbers. So -2 and 65 seems to work. Perfect. Last thing I want to do is make sure that the monsters and the players are always on top of the background. If they all have the same Z index, then there's no telling which level they'll be on, and we always want them to be above the background. So we'll just go ahead and we'll click on the monster object type, not the monster itself, because otherwise we would just be editing the one monster. We'll click on the monster object type and set its Z elevation to 1, and then we'll click on the player object type and we'll set its Z elevation to 2. So the player will always be on top of the monsters, who will all always be on top of the background. Alright, let's save, and then we'll preview the game to see how we did. So our top walls look good, the walls on the left look good, and hopefully I can get around some of these monsters. We'll go all the way down to the bottom. Shoot some monsters on the way. Yeah, our bottom walls look good, the corners look good, and we've left our right side of the walls open so that our monsters can still get in to attack us. So I'll let this monster keep going straight because I want to demonstrate something here. So our monsters are going outside of the screen and they're overlapping the walls. In the next tutorial, we'll go over collision and we'll add some obstacles and make it so that the monsters don't walk all over our walls. See you there!